Could the Cubs sign Devin Williams? Is he that back-end closer that the Cubs need to team up with the guys that they have and they're going to bring back in for a World Series run? Would he not go back to the Yankees? We're going to talk about that. How about another former Yankee? Would the Cubs be interested in Marcus Stroman? Would you bring him back? And I got to keep an eye on Zac Gallen, who is not signed. I still think the Cubs are interested in Gallen, and he could be one of those pitchers who has a big comeback season. Would you risk it for the money that he's going to want? All that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Thank you guys for being here. Let's get the show started. What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. Thanks for hanging. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit our QR code right there at the bottom of the screen under my microphone for AveD, our Web3 home. That is where we're going to have some swag that we give away. Some of you guys have already won and other stuff. Also get in the comment section. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us like you do on a daily basis. And this is that time of year where, we're not in the prediction business, but you try to be a little bit because obviously, that's what we're trying to figure out right now, what the future is going to look like for the Cubs franchise. What is it going to look like? So we'll get into that a little bit today, one step closer to next baseball season. I know we're a long way away, but this is where it starts, right? World Series is over. You try to make some moves. And one of those moves could be Devin Williams. You guys remember him as an all-star in Milwaukee. He pitched with the Yankees after trading the Milwaukee Brewers for him. And he was so good in Milwaukee. And then he had that huge ERA in New York, right? 4.79 ERA. But there's still a lot of good things about him. First off, he's got that four-seam fastball, sits mid to high 90s. Sometimes he gets it over 100 miles an hour. His changeup, a.k.a. the airbender. Anytime your changeup, one of your pitches has its own nickname, that means it's pretty good. And that is his signature pitch. It's deceptive. We know that. He throws it 12 miles an hour, slower than his fastball. Kind of reminding me of, I've always talked about this. I thought Randy Wolf had a killer changeup. Jake Arrieta had a killer changeup. Devin Williams has a killer changeup. And a killer changeup to me is the most effective pitch. I know when parents talk about baseball to their kids, they ask me what I think. I think you learn how to throw a changeup, and you mix that with a really good fastball, and you're tough to hit. Williams also has a mid-80s to upper 80s slider. Doesn't use that a whole lot. And then, he has the three-quarters delivery. And it's kind of that, three-quarters, the high three-quarters delivery, right? Almost over the top. Makes his fastball seem a little bit tougher to hit. And he's a strikeout guy and someone who doesn't look like is going to re-sign with the Yankees. And you're starting to hear, of course, the Dodgers, because, the Dodgers have more money than anybody else. So they're always mentioned in any kind of free agency. I mean, it's like they have two rosters full of players because they have so much money, right? But Williams could be going there. Of course, he played for Craig Counsell in Milwaukee, and Chicago would be a pretty good fit, for a guy who was there, right? He is sometimes super elite. Came back from a stress fracture in his back in 2024. You remember that. And then obviously was traded to the Yankees. It feels like he's one of these guys who, if the Cubs sign him, could potentially be one of the guys that really has a bounce-back season. I got to give the Cubs credit. It seems like they always find these guys. Like the guys that, you're like, well, this guy's done, like Drew Pomerantz, and then all of a sudden he's back. Brad Keller was the same way. So maybe he's the next guy. Not to say that he really took that big of a step back. He's going to have one of those years, right? Be where the contract's going to be probably a 1-year deal between 10 and $20 million. But maybe he gets more, right? I mean, maybe you give him 2, maybe you give him 3. Teams don't want to really stretch out these relievers because it's so much money. I've seen him projected to get as much as a 4-year deal for $68 million. And I say that he's going to get a multi-year deal, I think, but there'll probably be like options there, maybe player options. I don't know. I mean, I'm just over here predicting, but ESPN saying maybe 3 years, $45 million. That's 15 a year. I saw another 1 year, $5.7 million on a prove it deal with what was that? Spot Rack said that, and I could see that too. But I got a feeling even with the high ERA, somebody's going to be willing to pay him, right? So, and if it's a 1-year deal, anywhere between 10 and 20, and then but if a team feels really confident that he's going to have that bounce back year, then then anything can happen, right? Mets, Dodgers, Tigers, Cardinals, Yankees, Cubs, all kind of in listed as teams that might want a Devin Williams. I'd love to have a Devin Williams. Give him to me. We could use him in that bullpen. Nothing wrong with that. And I feel like when you look at the way that these playoff games went this year, the Dodgers opposite, right? They had to use the starting pitching to make up for the lack of a bullpen, but everybody else relied on the bullpen. So maybe we're overvaluing starting pitching because the Cubs had great starting pitching, got into the postseason, and they didn't even feel like pitching Shota Imanaga, right? All right, here's the second thing I want to get into. Would the Cubs re-sign Marcus Stroman? He was a member of the Cubs, and I just don't think that they're going to re-sign him. I mean, I'm just going to say that right off the bat. Now, he could pitch out of the bullpen. He could start. He was, at times, really good for the Cubs. And at other times, he was hurt, right? But he signed, a 3 year, $71 million with the deal with the Cubs 2022. He had a 3.50 ERA and 25 starts that season. Next year, he came back. He was 3.95. And then he opted out of his final year with the Cubs, and he signed that $21 million deal with the Yankees, right? I don't know. It's just he had that really weird injury. Just kind of felt like maybe some people were not happy about it was like a cracked rib cage cartilage thing, and nobody really knew how that happened. And I don't know, just a freak injury, but the Cubs needed him down the stretch, and he wasn't there. And then remember, he came back and he pitched, and he was not that good. Kind of disrupted things at the end of the season. So, so we'll see what happens. He would be, I bet you, easy on the budget, but how did he work out in the clubhouse? Is it someone that they want to deal with, or do they say, you know what? We'll pass on Stroman. I think that's what they're going to do. I don't see them signing Marcus Stroman. Now, the last guy, shout out to our guy, Brett at Bleacher Report, always doing a great job. Great story on there about Zac Gallen. And I kind of wanted to talk about Zac Gallen too. I mean, I really felt like the Cubs were going to trade the Diamondbacks last year for Gallen or Merrill Kelly. They didn't. And we could have used him in the postseason, although I know Gallen wasn't as good as he's been, but we've seen him at his best, and his best is pretty darn good, right? Gallen is expected to get somewhere between $75 and $80 million. So that's 18 to 20 million. And they're saying that maybe a 4-year deal. That's kind of where you're hearing that he's going to go. Ton of teams need starting pitching. He's not coming off of one of his best seasons. So maybe, teams would probably like to give him a shorter deal, maybe 2 years, $45 million, or have some kind of an opt out. There was a big decline in performance. I mean, he ended up with a 4.83 ERA, lowered his market value. He's got Scott Boras as his agent. Teams a little bit reluctant sometimes to deal with Boris, although I think that's changed somewhat just because of the market over the last year or so. But he's a potentially a top of the rotation guy. And you start to look at the Cubs rotation with Gallen, and you're like, you know what? I mean, you feel pretty good about it. I mean, I would, right? You got Justin Steele supposedly coming back. You got Cade Horton right there at the top of the rotation. Jameson Tyone, Shota Imanaga, Matthew Boyd, and then, maybe you add Zac Gallen in there. The Cubs, and what really made last year so good for the Cubs is that they had a lot of options in the starting pitching department. And I remember, and I've said this on the channel a ton of times, I remember Theo Epstein saying that you don't have 5 guys anymore. And there was a time when you had 4 guys. Older baseball fans will tell you that. But a 5-man rotation, no, man, you got to have 7 or 8, maybe even more. You got to have a lot of options when it comes to starters. Then they limit the amount of innings that these guys pitch on top of that. So how much money do you want to spend on a Zac Gallen when you're going, well, I don't know how much we're going to use him. I think you spend the money, because if there was a reason why the Cubs made the playoffs last year, that to me was like at the top of the list, because the starting pitching was so deep. Then they got Colin Ray coming back. I mean, he was great. Started in the bullpen and then was, in the rotation when people get hurt. They get hurt all the time pitching. So, could Gallen be one of those guys? I don't know. I mean, I would do it, but I also think that the Cubs are going to look at probably Dylan Cease before him. Some of the options from some of these guys coming from Japan that can pitch. And they're going to try to figure out the best way to use their resources, right? They're going to have some money to spend just because the budget's a little less this year than it's been. With, obviously Tucker leaving and, money coming off the books. But they've talked about pitching. Pitching's the name of the game. And so Zac Gallen, one of those guys that obviously is fantastic. All right. Hey, again, join our AveD, Mick Nation. Hit that QR code right there at the bottom of the screen and be a part of what we're doing. And appreciate all of you guys for hanging out. We'll give out swag. Got some here to give. So you just got to get out there and win. And how do you do that? Hey, we'll give away cash prizes as well. We pick games and stuff. I know there's no baseball games, but football. How about all you Bears fans? Got you a dub. Bears playing some pretty good football. Beat the Steelers. Everybody happy about that. All right. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the bell. And thank you guys. And again, we are proudly presented by Sevierville in the Smoky Mountains. Sevierville, right there by Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. Great place to spend the holidays. Millions of holiday lights and everything else. And it is a short flight from Chicago down there. Even not the driving bad either. All right. Thanks, guys.
When you head to the Smoky Mountains, it's only natural to visit Sevierville.
Even we had to check it out.
And we've been here our whole lives.
Experience the adventure of a lifetime.
I'm king of the world.
Even you can get a bird's eye view of the Smokies.
You're going down, Billy. Whoa.
Your Smokies start here.